Well, welcome to our next webinar in our Navigating Through Volatility webinar series with APICS Inland Empire. We have Cindy Elliott and Yasaman Kozemi. Is that how I pronounce that?
Yes.
No, good. On how location intelligence drives supply network resilience and recovery. What could be more important of a topic in today's world? So I'm really looking forward to having them. They have some vast experience. They both are working with ESRI. So Cindy heads up ESRI's commercial and industry marketing team. She helps to shape the role of geospatial analytics within the manufacturing industry related to new market analysis, supply chain operations, and advanced services. For more than 15 years, Cindy's worked with global manufacturers and enterprise class technology companies to influence customer-focused business transformation. She's an advisory member of the USC Marshall Center for Global Supply Chain Management Program and the TCU Neely School of Business Center for Supply Chain Innovation, and is an established thought leader on the Digital Supply Network and Manufacturers Advanced Series. So she's has a master's degree in international management from Thunderbird Graduate School and has completed Harvard Business School's program for leadership development. And Yasaman is a supply chain strategy lead at ESRI. Supply chain has been her passion for the last 10 years, so we're totally in sync with you. She has worked in the consumer goods industry as supply chain optimization and analytics specialist and holds a PhD in transportation and logistics with a specialty in supply chain systems. She also holds a master's degree in industrial engineering and management and has extensive knowledge and experience with academia and as a business advisor in supply chain and logistics. Specifically, she's worked in advanced analytics, strategic planning, and optimization under certainty within supply chain. So we have vast talent here with us today, and they are doing some really interesting things with regards to the pandemic. But even pre-pandemic, they had much to talk about. So we welcome you, and we look forward to your presentation. For those of you that have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box or in the Q&A. Probably the Q&A is preferred, but either is okay. And we will ask them as they finish the presentation. So all right, with that said, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, Lisa. Thank you so much. And thanks for this opportunity today. As you mentioned, ESRI has been really in the forefront in so many different ways with the pandemic, and really looking forward to sharing some of that with everybody today. Just want to make sure everybody can see my screen. I'll take a nod from Lisa that everything's showing okay. Excellent. As Lisa introduced, I'm Cindy Elliott. I'm with ESRI. I'm excited to be here with my colleague Yasaman today, taking through some kind of real life examples of how location technology is helping address so many different organizations regarding the pandemic, and we'll get started with that straight away. Many of you probably are most familiar with ESRI today through the Johns Hopkins University dashboard, and I thought I'd love to take you out and help you explore that dashboard directly. You probably see the dots and the dashboard quite often in the news, and I thought I'd share with you all that this is also available to the public at large. Everything that shows up here on this dashboard, we refer to it as a data set. So not only is it being presented by Johns Hopkins in this setting, everything behind it is a unique data set. So that means that, as organizations work with location technology to bring the data in for their own business purposes, you can get to the most granular level of data here. And what you might have seen already is I clicked on the US. I then can click on states within the US and then counties within that state. So I had to re-click California. California, and now because we're in the Inland Empire, or many of us are from the Inland Empire, I can look straight away at Riverside County and get very detailed into this information. And then what's interesting about this in San Bernardino, for example, being able to see, kind of the confirmed cases, active cases, the incident rate, even something as granular as the hospitalization rate. You also can come in here and change the different ways that you might want to see the data in the backgrounds. So it's very interactive. Again, what we're seeing here is a dashboard of information, but the idea is that behind all this is generating the data that allows us to have a pretty granular view into doing the analytics to solve for the public health aspect first and foremost of the pandemic, public health and public safety. Some other examples of the different organizations addressing the pandemic and the public safety response. You can see here, at a state level, county level, we're getting more and more granular at what we call block group level, which is the census block groups. The US military, there was a story last week when they deployed the regional temporary medical centers like the Jacob Javits at the, the ship off the coast of the US. They are using the technology to really understand where hotspots are, where trends are happening, and that type of thing. So again, it's the underlying kind of technology and spatial technology and location technology that's helping address the public safety aspect of the crisis. And it's because geography is what really unifies all this disparate information related to the case and the spread of the virus, the social distancing restrictions, and what does that mean? And so it's really the ability to see both at the case level, at the social or the geography level, the regional, state, county, census block level, but also within facilities. And we just had a really nice technology release today. But what's really interesting about what ESRI is doing right now is that most of the work that you saw, it's ESRI's built, and because of our history, has built the data sets and has built the information models that allow these institutions to bring the data in hours, right, versus days and weeks of a normal project or program. But as we pivot our thinking around society, that this is, by first and foremost, a huge public health and public health safety crisis. It has become, as we know, a parallel economic crisis and downturn. And now we're seeing the private sector and our business communities start to think about stabilizing business today, about recovering their business. And Governor Newsom, there's an expression, I've probably requoted it 1,000 times, Lisa's probably heard it a dozen already, is that I like the expression that there's no light switch, that there's no, okay, we're all gonna get back to where we were, or that everybody has the exact same model for their business and community recovery. In fact, every organization is going to have to play with the dials in their own way to see how they can bring their business back. And it might be very different than what it looked like before. And in some cases, we've seen where businesses are actually surging, right? The cleaning services, the sanitation or sanitizing services have really been disrupted, but they've been disrupted in a very good way. But now they're trying to figure out how to manage their new normal. And recovery won't be a rebound, but a climb. And this was a great quote by US Labor Secretary Scalia, that successful reopening or reestablishing the business has to be data-driven and scientific. That, in the past, we might have been good enough or okay saying, well, this is how we've done it for the last 5 years. We're going to keep doing that. There's no historic, kind of baseline that's going to tell us what we need to do in the future. And so everyone's figuring it out as we go along now. So taking that same concept is that you're using that geography again to unify all those unique layers of data, but now rather than shifting from the virus and hospitalizations, you're looking at where is sales still coming in today? Where is my supply network still resilient and viable? Where are my customers now? How are they traveling to get to my service and my products, including things like where are the unemployment rates kind of escalating so that maybe that's not a viable community for us or a viable market for us to be working in anymore. But the one thing that all these things have in common is geography, and ESRI's technology just allows organizations to use that lens to access and understand their business at that more granular level, knowing that what used to be is no longer good enough. And I wanted to take you through, again, this is all publicly available data that, we're really looking at how can we help jumpstart organizations with the data that is already available through download through the ESRI websites, templates to download the dashboards. It's been in our heritage at ESRI to be very kind of helpful, and we have a disaster response program that allows us to bring all these things forward very quickly. But from a business continuity perspective, you'll hear from my colleague later today from Yasaman and Kozemi, but we've already have this experience, have the ability to come and say, these are the types of things you can do with the technology, and even so much as having an available template ready for almost immediate access and loading your data into that template. So it makes it very easy to get started and going. And then the one other thing to show here as well is this resources tab that allows those data sets that I mentioned, those where is the cases, where are the social restrictions, the business restrictions, how does that, are roadways working, are city centers, allowing businesses to open, whether it's restaurants or stores or manufacturing facilities, dashboards and applications that are ready to download. And so those are the types of things that are, again, readily available to get started in very short order. And even we've made the software available for 6 months at no charge. The last one I'll show here is what looks like a very simple example. I forgot it's taking a while to load. Is it Walmart's dashboard? No matter what. So what they've done, it looks very simple right now, is it to put, very what I refer to as dots on maps, right? That they've said, here's our stores. But if you think about the complexity of the information behind knowing whether a store is open and available to the customer, is their pharmacy open? Do they have grocery pickup? Do they have delivery? That's a very arduous process for thousands of stores across the country. And being able to use simple kind of geography-based tools or location-based tools to inform the market, inform the consumer, to let them know where and how can they get access to the pharmacies and to home delivery of products, and then to have all that information here. So again, a lot of information, but allows the supply network then to understand where are you delivering and how do we have to make things available. So very easy tools that help companies get back on their feet and communicating with their customers. Another great story, this was an article that was covered in Texas Monthly recently. This is HEB. I don't know how many of you know HEB. I've had a chance to visit them. Love their stores, love their barbecue restaurants inside the stores in Texas. So they, pandemics and health crisis are not new to them, unfortunately, but they can date back to more than 10 years of tracking disasters related to the H1N5, the Hurricane Harvey, and others. So they have this continuous experience or continuous operating model to watch what's happening. And what they really, because of their ready preparedness for disaster management, or disaster preparedness, I should say, is that they were watching what was happening in China with their vendors and happening in Italy with their vendors, not just from a standpoint of what impact was it going to have to the supply chain, but they were also saying what happened in those communities. How did communities have to contract and withdraw into stay at home and shelter in place? And then how many weeks and days did it take for things to start to reopen? So that was one aspect of it, is that they were very prepared when the pandemic hit the United States to appreciate what the impact it was going to have in their stores. But then they also looked at what I refer to as alternative supply channels. They immediately started partnering with the food supply distribution network that would normally supply restaurants and education and brought those food products into the store for fast prepare at home meal setups so that their customers weren't disrupted in their ability to get the food and the materials they needed. So great use case. I quoted the paper here. Really encourage everybody to go out and take a look at it. The last example here is Central Arkansas Water. They have a very large field workforce that needed to deploy from home versus deploy from the operations center, like almost instantaneously, right? Like we all did. We were at home or work one day and we were home the next. And so now they're able to see a couple of very important things using simple web apps on smartphones. Where is their workforce available to work? It risks about other if people have been ill or someone in the household is ill, who else did they come into interaction with? It's not contact tracing, but it's just understanding your workforce and getting the work completed that needs to be done inside your operations from a field perspective or even from a site perspective. So really interesting story there. Obviously, we think that location technology, location intelligence has a huge role to play in this, because where we operate our business, where our workforce is available, where our customers are, where our products and services are located, all have kind of that common tie of geography, and it helps to make sense and bring all of the different organizations together throughout the enterprise. But this business continuity hub is this kind of open communications network that you can restrict internally or externally, but companies are being able to maintain kind of this constant presence for their vendors, for their customers, for their suppliers, and whomever that might be. And so that's an important aspect of this ability to stay continuous and not get disrupted in your business. So I'll wrap up with just a few quick things. This is, again, everything I'm showing here are ready to deploy apps within your organization, just running on a web-based application from ESRI. The workforce and the level of granularity that you can get to, or companies can get to when asking questions, and really understanding not just where is your workforce, but what, where they were yesterday in the context of where did that affect and not affect, impact any worker, but also we're in volatile times. Lisa and I were just talking about it, that, even today, we can't declare with certainty what tomorrow or 2 weeks from now is going to look like. We've seen plants closing recently and related to our meat products, but we've seen other plants opening. So we're not through the uncertainty of what we're going to go through with COVID. And so from an operations and a company's perspective, being able to maintain this kind of look at where is my workforce, where are they in context of where I need to operate my business and the tasks that need to be done, but then also capturing that kind of chronological history so that as you need to reflect back onto what's been happening, you'll have a good historic view into what's happening. We have a business recovery slide, is what we refer to it, is this concept of really understanding, if I'm a retailer, if I'm a wholesaler, I'm a warehouse system, I might have 30 businesses running in the Southern California area, but I can't open 30 overnight, but I'm going to open the first 5. And what are the best 5 to open, and can I get the staff, can I get the supplies and the service and all those resources available to me? So it's about having that next level of granularity of understanding. And as I mentioned, we can't use historic perspectives anymore. The supply network resilience, as I mentioned, I promised Yasaman will take us through some steps there. But again, very simple to visualize, use, and understand what's happening across your network, whether it be county specific, statewide, national, or global. Basically our technology knows no regional boundaries. And then finally, serving this up through what we call a business continuity hub, being able to push this out and put restrictions so folks can see it inside or outside of your organization, but very much being able to keep that open line of communication always up and running. Well, thank you for that. Obviously, I'm very excited about what we're doing and how we're working with our communities to bring businesses back online and make sure that they're operating in the most stable way possible. Right? There's very little buffer for risk right now, and so we just want to help organizations by getting businesses back up and running, we help our communities, right? And that's really the DNA from our owners and founders, Jack and Laura Dangemong, and we operate in 165 countries. But for them, every neighborhood is very precious, and maintaining quality of life and a resilient planet is really the company's mission. So with that, I'll introduce my colleague Yasaman Kozemi. And Yasaman, do you want to go ahead and get started? And I'll click for you. So make sure you let me know when I need to do that.
Sure. Thanks, Cindy. So as we know, coronavirus has forced a huge challenge on businesses to, for example, close stores or shut down their plants or reduce their production. And that has a huge impact on their, obviously, production capacity or some inventory shortages that we are seeing around in supply chain. Also, this impact is is being is being seen in product deliveries or service deliveries, and some companies are shifting their priorities to produce to produce the things that they weren't used to produce, and in order to catch up with the demand or the new demand or the uncertain demand. Also, companies, in some cases, they had to let go of some of their staff or employees because of, the cost-cutting measures. So now the important questions here are that. So first of all, how to identify and mitigate this kind of supply chain disruptions and risks, and when and where we can exactly begin to continue operations safely and effectively with within within the disruption, within this time of uncertainty. And what will our distribution network look like during and after the COVID-19? Is it going to change, or is it going to be the same? Which it is very doubtably, it's going to stay the same. So we're going to see huge changes. Next, please. That being said, as Cindy was also mentioning, the supply chain recovery is not an overnight event. It's a process. It's a continuous process, and we have a 5-step supply chain strategy or process for supply chain recovery that starts with mapping the data, visualization, assessing the network dependencies, communication, and then risk mitigation and risk analysis. I'm going to talk about more about each step in the following slides. So step 1 was mapping. By mapping we mean that it's you have to basically populate the locations of your supply chains, the entities of your supply chain, the location of entities of your network on the map. Bring in the business data, bring in any disruption related data. For example, bringing the COVID cases, which is an ESRI, for example, layer or ESRI provided data that you saw in the first slides. And then by this basically populating on the map, you can basically see what is going on in the context of that map, or in the context of the data that you have. Next, please. And we just want to I just want to let you know that you don't have basically any limitations in bringing data. You can have a minimum data data that is like your facilities, plants, the suppliers, tier one, tier two, the very fundamental supply chain entities. In addition, you can bring any business data, any data that your company or your supply chain has, and it's customized of the organization, and it can come from many different sources of data to the ArcGIS software. Next, please. After that, it's visualization of the data. So in these steps, with the customized dashboards and with the configurable dashboards that we have, you can basically see everything in one single pane of glass, and you can have all of your KPIs there. You can have, for example, current risk factors. You can have the capacity of plants, suppliers, logistics, anything that you want to measure or anything that you want to show for the analysis can be populated or can be visualized on the map, and so that you can basically identify the potential disruptions and see where are they happening and what are the numbers associated with them, and how they are being measured. Then after doing that, it's important to assess the dependencies of different supply chain echelons or supply chain entities. When you visualize upstream and downstream, then you can clearly see what are the dependencies between the upstream and downstream entities, and how is the flow of material. For example, where are you getting the raw material from, and where is the finished product of your company, for example, is going, how they are getting disrupted. And if a supplier or a plant is disrupted, you can isolate the affected one, and basically analyze what's going to happen in the downstream or in the upstream, and then you can basically identify the source of that problem without messing a lot with the whole supply chain. And after visualization and mapping and all that analysis, you can basically share all these analysis with different teams inside the organizations, in order to basically have the best practices between teams, and get their analysis with the ones that you have done. And it's basically it's going to be a team effort for everyone to see from different aspects. And the last step is really to dig deeper into the risk mitigation and response in the process. So it's very important to really see where the risks are happening. What are the scores for the plants and suppliers? Are they, some of them are higher risk in higher risk areas, some of them are lower, and based on that you can allocate and change the allocation of the supply and demand, or supply and procurement, for example, based on the location allocation models. And then you can determine different alternative based on the risk factors, based on how risky a region is or how risky a supply chain entity is. And you can definitely visualize that and visualize the alerts with our different apps like global risk awareness apps, and with the tracing app that I just mentioned. It is also it is also beneficial to know where things are coming from or where things are going, isolate them, isolate the risky ones, and take the take the best measure or take the best mitigation strategy, and notify everyone or notify the supply chain about the risks.
Thank you, Yasmin. That was great. One thing I wanted to mention, as we were going through these steps, we focused on plants and suppliers for this conversation, but this can relate equally to, centers of distribution, wholesalers, who are your primary kind of vendors and channels out to market. So we just happen to, in this case, focus on plants and suppliers, but it's any constituent within the supply network.
Yes, yes, exactly. The supply chain entities, they consist of the supply parts, or the upper upstream echelon, and then to the plants and to the warehouses, retailers, all of it, it contains all in the supply network.
Very good. Well, Lisa, thank you very much again for our opportunity today. And we left an email here if anyone has some questions, but happy to go back and show, navigate on the website some more, but didn't know if you wanted to open it up for questions now, if you had any questions, Lisa.
Yeah, well, let's start with, you gave us a few examples in the beginning, Cindy. Could one of you give us like an idea, an example that maybe you're aware of or that you worked on that relates to maybe like you were talking about the supplier side, or manufacturing plants, or maybe transportation? It'd be good to put it into, to use an example to bring it to life, if you will. It's really fascinating.
And I've been at ESRI just shy of 4 years now, and in my career in manufacturing and distribution, was not familiar with location technology, and so it's just been just a huge learning experience and phenomenal for me, so I can appreciate what it's like for others that are new to this. But one example I have, I can't share the manufacturer's name. We will be featuring it in an upcoming fireside chat, but they manufacture kind of household durable goods. So, think of things that you would install inside your home. You buy them at Lowe's or Home Depot. So major, kind of distribution network globally. It's a household brand. You would know if you saw it, but they manufacture globally, but they also sell and service and maintain globally. So even though they're headquartered in the US, they had, dozens of factories across the globe, and tens of, maybe hundreds, but tens of suppliers distributed globally. And Yasaman showed the link analysis or the dependencies where, the flow of goods, was like what's going where. And since they manufacture in in China, they have a global footprint. They were able to immediately, they were new to ESRI's supply network capabilities, but they knew GIS from other areas inside the company. But they were very easily able to deploy that environment that I showed, where that template, I said, just show me where everything is right now. And then they mapped the virus on it and said, okay, well, for this moment in time, we're going to assume that those plants and suppliers aren't going to be available, but we still have back order, demand that we have for these different retailers, major brand retailers. And so they were immediately being able to reassess, okay, where are my suppliers, where plants still shipping? How can I, what's the word I'm looking for? Reduce the gap of delay in my supplies and just kind of immediately reassess. So they could get that visual picture right away. And then that even included what ports were available from a shipping perspective and from a trucking perspective. So they mapped every port on the Mexico-US border to say which ports are still open for crossing over, what are those type of things, so they could deploy and can understand what was still going to be moving. So that's one that's a very manufacturer perspective, but their need to serve the market or deliver to the market didn't go away with COVID. It just got, as we talked earlier today, it was disrupted. But then as the virus shifted, they were able to say, okay, well, there's areas in China that are coming back online, but now I've lost my European channels. So they had a daily opportunity to assess and visualize exactly what was happening. Now, they could have got all that data, it's thrown over to them by spreadsheets every day, right? But seeing it visually and spatially, could then see where, if they dragged that flow of good over to another region, how did it reassess everything? So that was one example from a manufacturer's perspective. From a logistics provider, we work with a pretty well-known brand, and what they were able to do, one of their concerns was that they needed to get more and more dependent on their own analysis and service for keeping their aircraft running, because they deliver the world on time, right? So they were able to say, okay, what airports are still open and servicing, what cargo, air terminals are still available, and they were able to start keeping track of when the aircraft still needs maintenance. They don't care that it's COVID, right? But how are we getting the right parts and the right people to the right air terminal, knowing that was so critical. And so they were able to kind of, I refer to it as snap into place what they needed because of just the disruption.
Yeah, very interesting. And I think the last time we talked, you told me about a customer example too, where you could use the data to predict which stores to open,
Yes.
in what order, or it could be, you could replace stores with other concepts. But I think that, could you tell us a little bit about that as well? Because that's sort of very interesting.
Yeah, and what's important to, I agree, and my favorite, I just happen to, for now I'm giving away too much, but I'm Ulta True Blue, so I love Ulta. For full disclosure, they are using ESRI's technology. They spoke with us on stage at a Forrester event back in December of last year, which seems like a million years ago. And you can see on their LinkedIn posts and on their Facebook and their websites. So they immediately shut down by far the majority of their more than 1,000 stores. But regardless of whether social restrictions or business restrictions are lifted, like a county may say you can go back to business, but what they want to understand is, where are my customers? How can I best serve them? How do I keep my most? And what we've heard from so many companies is that the safety of their employees comes above all other things. And so how can they introduce kind of store or product availability without putting their customers or their associates at risk? So Ulta, you can see it on all their announcements, are using are opening up curbside pickup. Right. So if you think about the inventories, we call it, they're dark stores, right? All that inventory is inside the store. And because it still costs, you still have to put employees back to work. And now in these different situations, they may not want to do curbside delivery for every store. They may need to incrementally bring it back where they have the workforce, where they have the supply and the ability to consolidate supply from maybe multiple stores. So they're very prescriptively based on the neighborhood, based on the demographic of their loyalty community and the inventories and the services they offer by store. They're opening up kind of a store by store model, but they're doing it at scale. And what I love about the story there is that they're not just kind of putting their thumb up to the wind going, well, I hope this works, right? It's very, very methodical. So that's one that I could think of as an example. We're seeing more and more of those use cases coming forward. And that's what we're thinking. And I want to go back, you asked me earlier today, what's ESRI's plan, right? Like, we shut down our offices, but we did not quit working. I love ESRI. They're saying it's not go back to work, because we've all been working, but they want to bring us back into our offices as safely but as quickly as possible. But they're having to consider, right, like, what's our ability to be together but not at risk, right? And how do they, so they're using even our own technology to understand, do we have situations inside the building where our proximity is too close for a safe working environment and how do they adjust that. So we're making decisions a building at a time in addition to a location at a time. So in Redlands alone, I think we have more than a dozen buildings. That's all I'll say. So I'm just trying to, we're numbered, or we have letters. So I think just having the granularity of insight to be able to make those decisions and understand about safety, the ability of supply to operate the business, and then ultimately, is the community ready to re-engage in the business? Those are all big questions that can't be answered the same way for every company.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. And like you said, if when you look at your supplier base, and if you can, hopefully, if you have multiple suppliers and sources of supply, you could really be quite resilient. I can see how you could do that utilizing this technique, as well as starting up, as
Right.
you said, it's not an on and off switch. I mean, that's folks might like that idea, but it's not going to happen, or at least not successfully.
Right.
So we do have several questions, and they sort of rely upon some of the same things. Like, people are very curious. Like you said, it took you a while to fully understand how this whole process works. So I have several questions here that are asking, like, how does the ESRI process work in essence? You know, one is saying, does having a 5G network a significant factor? Another one is saying, could you explain, is it installed on like smart devices or wireless technology, or do you track objects and people? Another one is saying, like, it sounds like you would have to periodically provide internal data. You'd have to, if you were a company, you'd have to provide internal data to ESRI, and who owns the data. So basically, you know, like, what I'm getting from all this is that, and there's one that says, importing the data and setting up and formatting data sounds like a lot of work. Do you have tools to facilitate it? So the reason I'm telling you all of those questions, I figured you could explain a bit more about how it works, and then you probably could answer most of them.
No, it's good. And Yasaman, please be sure to jump in. I would say, so ESRI is a software and data provider. And so from a standpoint of the software itself, there is what we call ArcGIS Online. It's a very lightweight web based application or based software. It is unique to the subscriber. So very much like Salesforce.com, you know, your ArcGIS environment would be private and very specific to you, but all the mechanisms of the technology come with it, and as well as the access to all the data. We have something, you know, we call it the Living Atlas, and also the marketplace. So like the case of the COVID data, the case data, the hospitalization data, the social restrictions by county data, those are all data sources that are no charge, that we update, if not daily, weekly, with our partners who submit and provide that data. And then once you're able to bring in and kind of stand up just the layers of data, is what we call it, it's a very spreadsheets. As long as there's an address or either a full street address, or even if you want to keep it at zip code level, or lat longs in some situations, that data immediately understands, like we understand geography, we understand location. So you're just able to go in and bring those spreadsheets in periodically. There's not a lot of heavy lifting and professional services. It's all work that you can do. And again, that baseline of understanding where your facilities are mapped in your locations and your workforce mapped against the virus and the trends, that's kind of what we're trying to help organizations do right now, just as a baseline. All those apps that I showed further down in the slides, these are all downloadable at no cost, and they can be served up using they're just little web apps, right, that are connected to the org, that you're able to customize, put the fields in that you want, add the data that you want. And you know, it's what's nice is it stays connected to the rest of the data. So if you're doing a workforce capacity or a workforce kind of awareness, you can map that workforce against understanding what facilities are open. So you're not having to run things kind of separately, so they stay connected. So it's a online software, very nominal, kind of getting started costs, and especially right now, depending on your business, we are making available licenses and training and everything at no cost for a limited time. So not limited like 2 weeks, but like, through the end of July, possibly extended. So we just feel like this is the time for organizations to really feel comfortable getting this access to this software and helping solve for the crisis.
Yeah, and Cindy, if I can add to that exactly, is that so and even the good thing and the nice thing about our, for example, dashboards or web apps are that is that if you want to change anything, if you want to do
Mm.
what if analysis, if you want to add more data, or or just delete the data, or all this stuff, you don't have to really import and export your data into Excel, out of Excel, and again
Oh,
bring them in. You can just do all of them inside the environment with no problems. And we are integrated with most ERPs, as I mentioned, a lot of other softwares. They can be imported to our RGS software very easily, and then you can just imported once, and then you can do the rest of the analysis inside the software.
thank you, Asman. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, interesting. So it sounds like this question here about how can you ensure that you get timely and accurate data from your customers, meaning I think the customers to your customers. I'm guessing that you're more of a software and data provider, so you would have to be up to your customers, similar to Salesforce can't guarantee what's happening with the
Right.
data that's going in, or how do you probably
So
just
that's
offer
right. Yeah.
support?
So in the case, some of the cases I offered, I suggested was, in a lot of businesses today have some level of customer database and sales performance information, right? If your customer's tied to an address, and what they may still be doing for sales, or even sometimes, unfortunately, when they've had to cancel sales, you can start to understand what that looks like on a map. Is there a particular region or geography that is down, kind of turning down, or going down faster than others, or trending up, where others are going down? So you can start to say, well, we want to show, so that's one area, your own sales performance data, and how can I get more granular about understanding maybe why that is. Now we have, the software has the ability, or the ESRI's technology has the ability to go, let's go look at unemployment filings for the last 4 weeks. That might contribute to why you're seeing your sales performance data in a particular area or particular product category trending down. Is there still heavy social restrictions, right? Social gathering restrictions in Orange County versus Riverside County or San Bernardino County? And you can bring all these in and say, okay, well, there's a combination of things that are very important to my business, not my business, but my hypothetical business. It might be unemployment rates. It might be the spread or the increase or the surge in hospitalizations in an area, or something like that, right? So you can decide what are the contributing factors that advise or indicate whether your business could be reopening, staying sheltered, or staying shuttered, or maybe adapting to a curbside pickup, or adapting to a home delivery model. So it's that level of granularity. I think one, I was talking to a university in Texas today, and we're going to be doing some work together, and what they're looking at is, how is the population around schools and universities, I should say the lack of population now around schools and universities, contributing to the challenge of those businesses staying intact. Because not only do they lose their school population in March or early April, they may not be coming back in September in some cases. And so now you've got a business model around a food service model, or a kind of even a medical care or a healthcare model that's dependent on a seasonal population that's not going to come back. So I think those are the types of things that they're looking at, and the technology again we have this database called points of interest, and you can put every university and a geography on a map very simply, right? You can put every food service establishment on a map very simply. So you can start to correlate these things to, do they impact or influence your business model or not?
So do they, you provide some of the location data. So there's data
Yes.
you end up providing in addition to the company data. What about, like, to your point, unemployment rates? I can
Mm-hmm.
see like housing starts, some of the businesses that I work with relate to some of those key
Yeah.
indicators. Would you need to bring in, like, as a company, would you need to bring in that data, or do you have access to some of that data, or how would that
So
work? But that would be fascinating.
yeah, so we have for just because I can't help myself. So ESRI's been doing what we've done for 50 years. So we just celebrated our 50th anniversary in business last year. The breadth of relationships and data that ESRI can get is unparalleled. I shouldn't say get. The relationship, or the breadth of or data that we have access to because of these long-standing relationships in the public sector and the private sector are unbelievable. And so what I'm showing you here is just these are little thumbnails of data points. One of the things we're looking at now is SafeGraph follows the pings off your phone, and not my ping or your ping, but pings in general. And they're starting to keep track of, what communities, what neighborhoods are starting to see social activity again for the first time, right? And this is down at a very, very granular level. You see that's Manhattan. And then they can also overlay on it where are testing sites, where are grocery stores, that type of thing. Here's the Bureau of Labor Statistics monthly unemployment. We're getting down to a weekly unemployment listing here shortly by county. And so we have all of this wealth of data. These are just some snapshots of that. But yet, to your point, Lisa, we have quite an extensive set of data. Quite often, I'm not even aware of all the different things that we have access to. So if you have any questions and you want to know, can you get this data? I'm happy to help with that.
Well, it sounds like it's a great opportunity to maybe try it, to test it out and see what you could accomplish
Yeah, for
right
sure.
now. So that seems like a great opportunity. So another question related to that is, so are you somewhat like a SAS business decision support system type model?
So
Is the question.
yeah, so we are a SaaS technology, but the data and the decision, primarily the organizations we work with, they take in the technology, they bring the layers in, they do their own decision analysis. We do work with a few partners out in the community that do work for companies and do very kind of turnkey services and decision, what do you call it, decision analysis, and I can also introduce people to those partners as well. But primarily we're in the business of the technology and helping to curate the data that can help answer the questions. We really look at the partner community and our end customers, organizations, as being the ones that actually drive the data and the analysis. And what we haven't talked about in the response to the COVID resources is we talk about these incredible modeling tools that are available as a result of this. I think so. The ability to model the ongoing demand and analysis. I'm trying to find the IH. You've probably seen the one that I'm thinking of recently, the Washington model, University of Washington model, that has a running 12-week projection of hospitalizations and virus and deaths. So even though we're past the top of the peak, we have weeks and months of continued kind of cases. I'll just leave it at that, and hospitalizations. And so that what's so important about those numbers is that our demand for PPE is not going away, for example, and it's not only needed at the hospital, but it's needed in the manufacturing plant. A lot of time it's needed by our frontline workforce. It's needed by our first responders as well. So we can't take for granted just because we might be over the peak. We have months and weeks ahead of us of still the demands for that equipment. So those are very sophisticated models that companies are also, or organizations are working on, right? To help prevent or predict, a word used earlier, to predict what's going to happen next. These are some of those examples that I was thinking of.
Oh man, interesting. Well, and it seems like you'll be on the leading edge, certainly, on you know, there's talk about it might come back in the fall and, you know, like pop up. So I mean, it doesn't seem like until a vaccine is available, there's going to be quite a bit going on with this topic for at least another year, I guess.
Yeah.
It sounds like. So interesting. Now I know pre-COVID, and you probably still do this, but ESRI also, like we've talked about the consortium that we're looking at for advanced manufacturing and logistics in the Inland Empire, but I think you do other like collaborations among your clients. I'm not sure how it all works, but basically I think you're like a hub as well of information, well, certainly of data, but of sharing information. I mean, do you do that sort of thing with your clients as well?
We do, and a lot of it's in the case of, we were sharing some of those early examples. If even if you think of something, you know, we have a disaster response program. That's one aspect of it. We operate that, not me, but we, ESRI, and a very brilliant group of individuals. So for every disaster you hear about, whether it's wildfire, hurricane, tsunami, and now the pandemic, ESRI has a tremendous resource of data and people who go into the field, into those frontline with the workers and the others that are addressing the crisis, because we think only by collecting that data and helping while we're there can we create that predictive model that shares what's happening across, what's going to happen next in the world. We also work, as you mentioned, collaboratively with you know, right now we're working with different universities and developing programs that, you know, just sort of to develop the workforce to be more location savvy and location smart. But those consortiums, the one right now we're working with, the Yasaman, the USC Healthcare Consortium that combines the USC Dornsiff Center for Spatial Sciences with the USC Marshall Center Global Supply Chain Management School, and really trying to work with other universities, University of Arkansas, Texas Christian University, University of Alabama. It's these consortiums who believe that by working together, we're going to have a greater propensity to solve for these big, meaty problems, right? And one right now is, you know, I referred already to PPE. We're now starting to look at a food, you know, kind of security concern across the globe or across the country. And just saying by working on them together, we're being able to bring some of the best minds forward through these university programs and let them develop the models and deliver the value out to the market. So we're very excited about those.
Yeah, no, it sounds really forward thinking in essence. Yeah. So I guess the last question that they have, which seems like a good place to wrap up anyway, is if we wanted additional information about ESRI and products, it seems like you had put the website up, but do you have any other recommendations, like maybe a newsletter or something?
Yeah, so a couple things. I put back up here, there's a very simple email that someone could share. They have a very particular question. So in addition to the website, and you can ask for immediate GIS support there if you need it, I would say the other area that we, let's see, where next? ESRI offers this digital publication called Where Next. I imagine, I'm going to assume. So we just had a major story out today about how do you reconsider your workplace to bring your employees back. And the reason we I think it's top of mind for us as we're trying to figure out what to do with our offices globally. But you can see here there's several articles around COVID about bringing back business, but you have to do it in the right way. And in any of these, I don't think it was at the top, but if you read the articles, there's a place in those articles that you can ask to subscribe, and it'll share. You'll subscribe to the series, this executive insight right here. So that's a good place to just get kind of the latest thinking and context around COVID, but also just around location technology as a whole.
Great. Well, thank you very much. That's it's been really fascinating, and we appreciate you both taking the time to talk with our group today. It's been great, and we will post this webinar in our archives, as well as the presentation slides, if you're okay with that, as a PDF. And I wanted to alert folks that we still are adding a few webinars to our series. As I said earlier, you could say, unfortunately, I guess, we're not going to be out of this anytime soon. So we're continuing to make sure we can provide value to manufacturing and distribution companies, and how we can, and logistics companies, as to how we can successfully ramp up. So our next webinar is going to be in 2 weeks, and we should have it posted shortly. It's going to be about distribution and delivery services, and someone from Shamrock Foods is going to talk to us about what they're experiencing and what they're finding, and some ways to navigate in the distribution world. So join us for that, and stay tuned. We have all of our webinars in our archives as well. So I want to thank you both again.
Thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate it. Enjoyed it.
Thank
very
you,
good.
Lisa.
Well, have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
Bye.
too. Bye.